I am Tock Lim. Welcome to this segment, which is slightly different part of the dating and marriage process. So earlier on, you have already heard the presentation of two couples who have gone on with a marriage and see their children growing up. So one probably going for national service and the other probably going to high school. Now to this segment, we are talking about people who have just been brought together. So in NHG, together with Spring, as well as A-Star, we have now tried out a new platform called OIC, or Open Innovation Challenge, that we pitch certain clinical problems and we invite submissions from our scientist community to present the solutions. It's a bit like arranged marriage of the Asian community. So today we are very happy to announce the 3 winners for the OIC challenge. We'll invite the presenter one by one on stage to give you a presentation on their project. Later, we'll be inviting the mentor to come up here also to say a few words. And it's the reverse type of classroom. Here, the presenter get to ask questions. Yeah? And of course, in the audience, if you have questions to the presenter, please feel free to ask. So without further ado, I'd like to present to you the first winner. The project is called Deep Red, and the presenter is Pravita Krishna Sway, scientist of I2R of A-Star. Sorry for my pronunciation.
Oh, you were perfect, thank you. Thank you so much. It's a great honor to have this opportunity to share a little bit about our journey through this Open Innovation Challenge. So while they bring up the slides, maybe I'll just introduce myself briefly. And this is our, we call ourselves Deep Red, and that's because it's deep learning, which is a technique of artificial intelligence in radiology. Just to share a little bit about myself, I'm passionate about 2 things. One is data and numbers, and the other is healthcare and caring professions in general. And through, thank you, I appreciate that. And through my own journey and career, I have nurtured these 2 passions of mine. And so on the one hand, I wear a data scientist hat. I do research in computer science and statistics, data science related fields. And then on the other hand, I wear a translational research hat, translating this to healthcare data. And at different stages in my career and at different stages of projects, you know, one of these hats takes kind of a superior role to the other hat, and, you know, over time they balance each other out. So when I started at A-Star a couple years ago, I was working primarily on the computer science hat, which is the deep learning side. And we were primarily looking at public data sets for, you know, healthcare-related challenges. So examples are here. Kaggle hosted a big data science bowl with a lot of lung cancer scans. And the question was, can you improve lung cancer detection? Similarly, DREAM, which is an organization run through Synapse, hosted a digital mammography challenge where the question was, can you reduce the recall rate of breast cancer diagnosis? So what we were doing is doing research with these data sets in our team, building advanced deep learning models, which are essentially machine learning models that can learn from large data sources and then map those data sources or images to predictions, such as malignant, benign, normal, abnormal, etc. And you can train these models. And so this was the more computer science hat. And when this challenge actually happened earlier this year in June, clinicians from national healthcare groups, so in our project specifically, Professor Tan Heng, who might be here somewhere, came by and said, well, you know, we have some needs that are not just internet-based data science challenge needs, but real clinical needs that we face here in Singapore in our hospitals. So the need that was presented to us is that radiology as a profession is having a huge demand-supply imbalance. radiologists have much more work to do than they have time to do it. And simple things like chest x-ray reads, which are very common because they happen for employment screening and other related purposes, in addition to medical referrals, actually consume a lot of our time and give us too much work to do. So the need that was articulated was, well, it would be great to have some automated chest x-ray reads or evaluations to basically detect the normal and then only present the abnormal to the radiologists. So this was great because our team said, well, we're working on related things, and there's an immediate sort of resonance, which I guess triggered the so-called marriage or the courtship that we're talking about. But then the initial stages of this was not just, well, we have a solution and let's go build a prototype. There's actually a sort of needs refinement process or a needs evolution process where we started going through and saying, well, if we did actually automate the x-ray reads, what would that do in the clinic? And what's the measurable success or impact that we can have? Is it that we reduce turnaround time, which in triage applications can be really significant? But then the answer is, well, it's hard to actually map turnaround time to an automatic reading of one image, because turnaround time really has multiple complex steps that are involved, in terms of how the image is routed, the scheduling process and everything else. So that's not really the right need. Is it that, well, if it were automated, radiologists wouldn't miss stuff like little abnormalities in the spine or in the lungs or something, and then there's a huge load right now of accuracy or missed diagnoses that we can avoid, those so-called black swan events. But then, we went back and with our clinician partner did the numbers and said, well, those are actually very few because the liability burden and the addendum rate is not, very high, at least in Singapore hospitals for the most part, and with chest x-rays specifically, it's not that high. So then, what we zeroed on with this sort of iterative process is actually that a lot of work is actually consumed by the need to audit clinical outcomes. So a radiologist will read a scan, and then there will be a reread after this, and so that's actually sucking up a lot of time that could be dedicated to something more significant like an MR from a cancer patient or something. So that was our needs evolution process, which was quite enlightening and very interesting part of this initial journey. And then, comes, well, if you have an audit solution, we started considering what is the business model, what is the value proposition to the various stakeholders. So we started going through with corporate mentors, some of whom you'll see here in our panel later, and identifying these stakeholders. So there's the requesting doctor, who's not the radiologist. There's a radiology department or a scanning center. There is the patient who gets the x-ray. And then there's the radiologist who reads the scan. And finally, there's a report that's generated, and so the person that gets the billing from the report. So this is great, right? And we could go through and define value proposition, but the sort of aha moment here was that actually there's hidden stakeholders in this whole process that can easily be sort of forgotten if you don't pay attention. So actually the radiologist that reads the scan is using something called a PAC system, which is the Picture Archival and Communication System, and there's a vendor that's actually responsible for that PAC system. So this is a key stakeholder, the vendor, who is responsible for actually integrating our solution into the workflow. And then the teleradiology centers as well. So that was an interesting part of the process that we discovered through our stakeholders. And then just in terms of where we see ourselves right now, we were technologists doing research. We are receptacles, looking for receptacles for capabilities. And then the clinician came along and helped identify a need. And then the need was defined, basically taking us to the more product innovation stage. And then finally, with the corporate resources as well, we were able to sort of get into the business model, stakeholder value proposition space. And this is an ongoing iteration, which I think will continue, from the examples in the previous session, probably not really done at the moment. And hopefully with a supportive ecosystem, we can move from POC to POV quickly and then go from, just being researchers that are improving accuracy to really serving billions of patients. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Fabita. So I guess the radiologists in the audience will look forward to this day, that they don't have to look at routine chest X-ray for 10 hours a day anymore. Thank you. Please take a seat. I'd like to invite the second presenter, Mr. Sun Tao, who is a scientist in Institute of Microelectronics of A*STAR, and his problem statement that he's going to tackle is about a non-invasive method to measure the respiratory rate accurately and quickly. So, Mr. Sun, please.
Today, I would like to share with you our journey of inspiration, respiratory rate monitoring. I have been working in IME for 7 years. Since last year, we developed, sorry, a little bit urgent. Since last year, we have developed the electrical skin to detect force and pressure for robotic arm, because nowadays most of robotic arms do not have the sense of how much force they applied. So it is difficult for them to handle fragile substance. So our initial aim is to develop the electrical skin and then integrate the electrical skin with the robotic arm, which can be used in hospitals to facilitate nurse to turn over or transport patients. Traditionally, MEMS force sensor is rigid and has high performance. However, it is difficult to integrate them with the objects with curved surface or irregular shape. So many scientific efforts are devoted to developing flexible piezoelectric sensor or tactile sensor. But all these efforts are not so successful that the flexible piezoelectric sensor shown here is curly and has low performance. After several rounds of failure in microfabrication, fortunately, we invent a novel microfabrication process, which is CMOS compatible 8-inch wafer process, and we can use the microfabrication process to fabricate the piezoelectric sensor with different geometries and layouts. So the microfabricated sensor is flat and flexible. Most importantly, the flexible piezoelectric sensor keeps the best record around the world in terms of quality. So it can not only pick up the pulse in real time, but also can collect energy from low frequency energy harvesting. But at this moment, we still not realize the respiratory rate monitoring until the Open Innovation Challenge in healthcare. So, in this briefing session, we noticed the respiratory rate monitoring because of the large number of patients in the emergency department. So I was thinking, with the rise and the falls of the patient's chest, there is a strain on the skin. So once we wear the micro system on the skin, the flexible piezoelectric sensor can generate electrical charge with the respiratory rate. So I approached to the medical team and clarify the clinical needs. So the medical team told us the current gold standard method of measuring respiratory rate is manual count, rise and fall of patient's chest in 1 minute, which poses large and heavy working load to medical staff. So in order to simultaneously keep the working efficiency and accuracy rate, we propose a micro system to monitor the respiratory rate in real time. The microsystem consists of piezoelectric sensing element to pick up breathing rate and the electrical circuit to filter the noise and amplify the signal. The microcontroller to automatically count the breath rate, and the Bluetooth transceiver to wirelessly transfer the data to external device. So our microsystem is light, thin, flexible. It is very convenient for patient to establish the comfortable device-skin interface. The novelty of the microsystem lies in the sensor part. It is economical and disposable. So the medical team work efficiently and effectively to arrange the preclinical trial for us. We test many skin conditions: the moisture skin, the high-risk skin, the patient with tremor, irregular breathing, the regular breathing. So the results of preclinical trial is quite encouraging. The average accuracy rate is around 97% compared to the gold standard method. The representative data is shown here. So afterwards, after several rounds pitch coaching, ETPL links us with the ETPL links us with the business team. So the business team help us amplify clarify the market size, the user case, and build up the business model. So now we are working on the system integration to create the first generation of prototype. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sun. Another very promising marriage. We're hoping that nurses can recycle much of the time that is used to measure pulse and respiratory rate. We can recycle the time for them to care for patients in the more important areas. The next project, the next winner, title is Radio Tube. The presenter is Ms. Liu Huizhi.
Yes. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Hui Zhe from Radio Tube team. Today I'm going to present to you our project on the radio frequency conformation of nasogastric tube placement. First of all, what is nasogastric tube? It is a tube that is inserted through the nostril, down the esophagus, into the stomach. It is used for feeding as well as for extracting stomach content. It is a very, very common procedure. About 5% of hospital patients and 20% of home nursing patients require this procedure. However, when you insert a tube through the nostril, very often it ends up in not only the stomach, it may go into the lung. Studies have estimated that up to 3% of the cases end up in the lung. If it is undetected, feeding through the lung can be fatal. This is so catastrophic and preventable that the UK National Health System identified this as a never event, meaning it should never happen. But it does happen. In the UK, in over a 5-year period, there are 20 deaths and 39 cases of serious harm resulting from misplaced nasogastric tube. In Singapore, by doing a quick search, I can find 2 death incidents in the past 10 years. So when we are presented with this problem, we are thinking, how hard can this be? Think about the possible solutions, the existing solutions like pH testing, CO2 X-ray. They have all been tested, but they have their own limitations. For pH testing, the nurse needs to extract the stomach content through the tube and test the stomach content for its pH value. However, half of the times, the nurse fails to extract any content due to whatever reasons. For CO2, it can also be confusing as the patient may be on medication that releases CO2. X-ray is the golden standard. However, it exposes the patient to unnecessary radiation, and also it's manpower intensive that we need a nurse to send the patient for X-ray, and it's also not accessible for patients in nursing homes setting. So what can we do? Actually, before this, about 3 years ago, we thought of applying radio frequency technology for biomedical localization. However, at that time, we don't have collaboration, couldn't identify any clinicians, and so we dropped our proposal. So this time, ETPL built this platform for us, and to know the clinicians and corporate mentors. This time, we are able to develop this capability. And as you see in the picture, it's a radar. It contains thousands of antenna elements. It can focus the radio beam into a very narrow beam and track a golf ball 165 kilometers away. If it can do this, I'm sure it can also track a tube a meter away. So the challenge is to make it smaller. So we think of this device that is a radar device that is stationed 1 meter away from the patient to track the tube. However, after we discussed with clinicians, they mentioned that their room is already very clustered. They do not want any extra piece of device stationed in their room. So also they mentioned that in the hospital, they can always send the patient to X-ray. It's more critical in the home care settings that the patient do not have access to X-ray, and they need a more affordable and portable solution. Then we come up with this current solution that we make use RFID technology and the pH coating for this radio tube. We embed the RFID tag at the tip of the tube and cover it with pH coating. At the same time, we have a RFID reader that can send a very narrow beam of signal and pick up the presence of the tag. The nurse can use this handheld device, scan over the patient body. It can be placed a few centimeters above the patient's body. Once the tag is detected, the reader will give a beep sound and display the pH value on the screen. So our solution can give fast, instantaneous results in a few minutes. It has low cost, highly accurate as the X-ray solution. It's easy to use, not require much training, and it can be used to run confirm after feeding, and it's highly portable. For this project, we would like to thank our clinicians for giving us this problem statement and for us to solve, and for giving us ideas of what the patients really need. And we would also like to acknowledge our corporate mentor from research technology for giving us ideas how to make our products to go to the market in the shortest possible time. And last but not least, we would like to acknowledge ETPL for giving us this platform to interact with clinicians and corporate mentors. Thank you very much.
As you can see, this is a potentially hugely important project. There are many patients, not only in the hospital, but also in the nursing home, and sometimes at home that need feeding tube. And sometimes the patient and the family member doesn't know maybe whether the tube is the right place. I think this is hugely important. So we have 3 very nice and hugely important projects being hammered out. The innovators are working on it. So to guide them, we have invited 2 corporate mentors, Mr. Willie Koh and Ms. Emma Wong. Willie is the CEO of Racer Technology. He is the radio tube corporate mentor. I'd like to invite Willie to the panel. The other corporate mentor is Ms. Emma Wong. She's from Partnership Strategy and Ecosystem Development Lead, MSD International. Emma is the Deep Red corporate mentor. Emma, please. So this is a nice family gathering. Now we have a newly wed couple and a marriage counselor here. So it's time for the newly wed couple to ask the marriage counselor questions, and also very experienced innovator and scientist in the audience. Great to see Barry here, and Russell here, and Prof here is there, and Dr. Southern is there. So there are many more in the audience, so please feel free to take this great opportunity to ask questions. So this is the first time speaker get to ask questions, yeah, so don't miss the opportunity.
Yeah, actually, before this question session, I want to have some sharing here. So just now, Prof. Ling mentioned that we are the marriage counselors. Actually, for me, I stand from corporate innovation side. I'm from MSD. So what we are looking into at the end of the day is also marriage wisdom as formal partnership instead of just counseling and looking around. Yeah. So I give it back to everyone.
Truly.
Okay, for us, we started a company like 23 years ago, and at that time, there's no such thing as 1345 or anything. I remember the first 1345 we won, we had to get it from Europe, and a lot of times, most of my misters are in US. So good that so all my life I've been earning US dollar, and of course in the past it's very difficult to get in and everything. But a lot of people use us because some of them they feel that like Medtronics, Boston Science, they feel that if they were to develop this in-house, they would take them 5, 6, 7 years. If they use SME out, we take a shorter time because we are very passionate on it. So throughout the experience, we find that now that we have gained so much experience and all is either we hit a wall or someone will ask us to go fly a kite, some will help us. We thought that now is a good time for, actually back 5 years is good times to pass this knowledge to the local startup here. Now it's so good. Now you have all this grant and all these hospitals to support. And also I think Asia is also a very good market. Asia is a very good market to launch your products. And later if you can, China is also a very excellent market. In fact, we have a lot of customer now is reverse. They come to Asia to ask for products. I just closed 3 factories of my factory in China, but we still have 7 in Asia. So we find that here for high mix, low volume is very lubricative, and it's also a very ecosystem. So medical device so we find that there's also a lot of ideas here. In fact, most of my customers, some in Europe, are now coming back to Asia, especially Singapore, to see if they can launch their medical startup here, because here is the government is doing a great job. Yeah.
Okay, I have a question. Regarding this gastric tube, we realized that 30% of the tube are consumed in the UK, 35% in the UK, 30% in the US, and the rest in the rest of the world. And there are big growing aging countries like China, Japan, and Europe. And we'd like to seek your advice that where should we start our marketing? We want to market this gastric tube device.
My advice is you go for CE first. Don't go for FDA. FDA is out to kill you, because in the whole world, there are 2 styles of certification: CE and FDA. FDA is run by the government. That means most of the thing is civil servant. So as a civil servant, I tend to kill you because I don't want to approve you. What happens if later 5 years later your products launch in the market and you have some problem, and then my job is at stake. But CE is different. CE is they outsource. So TUSUD, TUV, CSA, all they outsource. So you're paying the outsource to certify your product for you, which you will sure get shorter to the market. So I think CE is a better choice. CE, and then after that, if once you have CE, you can do it in you can sell it in Europe, Asia. You if you want, then you have a back-to-back HSA. Used to be HSA is a bit tough, but they listen. They now do a back-to-back if once you have a CE. And of course, my thinking is CE first. And once you have all this, I think China will sure accept, because the branding is very important. Where it come from is very important. A lot of the Asian countries actually now look up at Singapore as the model. Whatever we buy, whatever we develop, the hospital in Asia, because Malaysia, Thailand, they also start up. They have their own private hospital to cater for the rich and famous. They actually their source, they don't want to be number one. They always be number two. Singapore will be number one. Whatever we source, whatever we buy, they just follow because they know we are very clean. We outsource trees and everything, if we buy, is good to go. So that's our experience. Because besides Racer, we also start investing in distribution because we don't want to be in distribution company. We don't want to also manufacture our products. And then I sell my products because I have 65 other key customers. I don't want to be a competitor to them. So what we do is that we invest in distributor. So they distribute our product on a different brand. Please don't brand Racer. Don't put our brand. They can OEM and brand other brand. As long as there is, you can create an ecosystem, it's good to go. So most of the distributor, from feedback they come up, we find there's a trend in this area. So Asia is actually a very good market to go. Vietnam, Burma, Thailand, Malaysia is also very good. Thailand.
Thank you very much, really.
And just to add on, so just now you mentioned the CE and FDA, right? I guess that's if some of you guys are in the space working on a medical device, you know the game. So basically, if you get CE first, actually it helps you to get your FDA faster. And yeah, if you can strategize the first market you enter, FDA is not a kill game certificate that you must get at the beginning. So.
In another point, I was in state, and then actually this Donald Trump come up a new because they need to change some of the FDA. So I think in August or in September he come up a new system for FDA. The bad thing is the cost is now very high. It's increased by 25%. So class 1, class 2, class 3, there's a standard cost. I think class 2B is $500,000. You need to, that's a rough cost because they run out of shortage of manpower. But the good thing is that, so we have one product that we do for a customer. We go for CE. CE is class 2B. Then we bring it to FDA. It happened is after this thing implemented. And we go in and then we find that they put it at class 1. Then we ask why. So they say that although the fee is increased, but good thing is that they feel that now they run out of shortage of manpower, they declassify it. So as long as they feel it's not really life-threatening, they declassify it to class 1. So that's a good news. That's the best news of all for Donald Trump.
So I have a question. What are some of the difficulties, like if you had to go back and do certain things differently with Racer in the Asian market, what would those be and what were the sort of sticking points that you didn't anticipate?
I will still go into medical device, but I hope you understand medical device is very deep pocket. Very, very deep pocket. So in order to survive, we also do Internet of Things, IoT, and other stuff. But I realize is that with other things come into, so we have design office in the Bay Area. I realize is that now I mix both into one. Anything that is in IoT, actually you can combine it with medical devices, the technology. For instance, in IoT, we come up with a new process of waterproof, a lot of wearable. So Jawbone, we are the first one to do for them. Nike, we are the first one to do waterproof. So in the olden day, waterproofing is very tough. You have to put oil ring, rubber mold and everything. Today, you don't have to. Back 7-8 years ago, someone come out with new technology called low pressure molding. And that's cool. So now most of the wearable is done this way. But we are not in wearable anymore. Actually, I do for Fitbit. When Fitbit come to us, it's only 3%. James, Eric, and his father. But when they grow, they forgot about Racer. They actually go to Foxconn. So now we don't do wearable because I think wearable is very low end. Too many people do wearable. But we're now doing wearable for the medical industry, for the hospital. So now you go in, you don't need to have the nurse come to check the temperature every time. You don't need to go to check your blood pressure every time. You do a wearable, and the wearable need to be waterproof. But you want it to be low cost also. So increase productivity, I think so. There should be a device that can check all this all in one.
So I have a question for Ms. Wang. Could you give us some suggestion for startup company? So how can we compete with others to survive?
You mean compete with other startups?
Yeah,
or?
with similar products.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What's the
Sure.
most important aspect for us to solve?
Sure. So for me, it's also a learning journey. So my role as ecosystem partnership lead gets me the opportunity to engage with a lot of partners, including startups, both in Singapore and in the region. And what we find is that at the end of the day, it's really not the ideal that make a winning team a winning team. So when we look at you guys, maybe your idea is not the first in the market, but what will make you go far, I think, like what Willie mentioned, one thing is that you start in a very nice place. You start in Singapore, where your IP is protected. You start with ATPL, where your clinical trial and discussion process is happening in a very collaborative manner, where you get constant feedback. That really helps you get your innovation stay on the ground. That's really differentiating you. And what will make you go further? One thing you can think of is working with someone like us. I'm not saying you are all matching partners in the future with MSD, but just be open for conversations. Talk to pharmaceuticals, talk to medical device companies, talk to like even those big players. I saw just now on the 8th floor, like Philips Healthcare, like Johnson & Johnson. You never know. What is happening to this ecosystem game nowadays is that actually everybody is hacking the same game. Where from providers, from payers, from insurers, or from corporate side like us, or from you guys, from a research background, starting as a startup entrepreneur. But we're solving a social problem. It's a population health problem. It's a productivity problem. So when you start as an inventor, you also want to think about what's the bigger problem you are solving. The better you're articulating it, the more you can, generating a larger impact at the end of the day.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
So thank you very much for the panelists. It's indeed a great discussion. I think maybe I can summarize to say that the Singapore MedTech or innovation platform and ecosystem is maturing. We have now dating services such as OIC. We have mentors such as Willie and Emma with great knowledge and in-depth knowledge of how to bring innovations to fruition. With academics in our room here who are doing basic research that subsequently can be translated. So I'd like to encourage all in the community here to take innovation as part of our job. I'd like to maybe close with one remark from Göran Henrik. Tomorrow you'll hear Göran speak. He's from Sweden, Jönköping. He always tells us that as healthcare worker and collaborators, we have two jobs. One job is to do it, the other job is to improve it. So with this, I'd like to thank the panelists and congratulations to the OIC winner.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, and Professor Lim for this wonderful panel discussion. If these presentations have inspired you, here's a short video to find out a little bit more about the Open Innovation Challenge and possibly how you could take part.
We met up with the team from the Singapore Bioimaging Consortium, SBIC. We told them about our needs and the current shortfalls with the imaging modalities for skin cancers. We came up with a design. With this enhanced technology, it would allow us to better visualize the skin structures.
I think this project started because we identified that technology was something that was lacking in mental health care, and we wanted to employ the use of technology in monitoring and tracking patient outcomes.
Essentially, NHG is the clinical partner for this challenge, and what we do is to provide the clinical expertise, and we bring along the various clinical use cases. We are very happy to be a part of this challenge.
As a continuum of technology commercialization as a journey, as an iterative process, we are not just looking at technologies per se and how do we translate research output. We're also looking at how do we bring in capabilities that are already developed by our local enterprises.
So at Spring, we are looking at supporting companies with scalable innovations that can be exported. We are actually increasing or raising the overall innovation level in the healthcare system.
From my perspective, I believe it's actually a very good platform that puts together people from different perspectives.
I think they help us to be exposed to the clinicians who are at the forefront of hospitals.
Because we are trying to solve clinical problems, it has been very helpful for us to be able to talk to all the clinicians and understand from them what is the current limitation, what are the things that they really need.
I think the workshop, mentorship, and the clinician are quite helpful and useful. For example, Mr. Peter teaches us how to attract the audience attention to present our products.
For our case, in fact, we learned a lot from the workshop and also through the talking with the mentors and clinicians. We better understand what is the issue.
When I started 22 years ago in medical device, it's very new here in Asia. They don't even have the ISO 13485 here that we have to get it from Europe to come over. And along the way we learn our error, but we feel that that's the way we want. From all this experience we gain is valuable, it's good. We have this program to advise the startup what are they facing, what are the things they should concentrate in designing, in documentation.
Through this game challenge, we hope that we can create a more meaningful way of how our staff can deliver their job, and also at the same time, we hope that can provide better care for our patients.
I think it's very unique because we are facing the problems. We know what is our issues. We can foresee what are the proposed technology that can help us deliver care better.